I was taught by Greek by the great W.B. Stanford, who was very, very forbidding. And but I went to Stanford's retirement dinner about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and I was very flattered. After the speeches, he came and he sat beside me, and he said, "I'm so honoured that you came down," he said. I said, "What do I call?" It was WB. I said, "What do I call you, William or Beetle?" And I was a bit pissed by this time. And he said, "You may call me Bill." Well, I said, "Bill, you used to scare the shite out of me." Pardon the Greek. He said, and then, it was such an extraordinary thing to say. He said, "If I had my life over again, I would choose to be a poet rather than a scholar."
So there I was, 21, queen of the airwaves in Daytona Beach, Florida. A far cry from war-torn Belfast. Nothing was going to make me go back. At least not for a while. I'd done my finals and was to land a mediocre degree in social anthropology. And I'd absolutely no idea what to do when I graduated anyway. And this was as good a place as any to study another tribe. It was a new lifestyle, nothing like I'd ever experienced. Daytona was full of college students, Vietnam vets, crazed loons of surfers looking for waves. Just about everyone you met, regardless of ability, seemed to be at college. You could study anything at college in America and the States. A degree in beauty skills was perfectly acceptable, as was mortuary technique. No intellectual snobbery here. It was surprising just how fast you could get used to a totally new way of life, because, let me tell you, working for Zolly took some mind adjusting. This was the station owner. I mean, he was crazy in the truest sense of the word. Everyone he surrounded himself with was crazy too, a cast of fools and lunatics. Hobbit, the station's engineer, was the first workaholic I ever encountered. He didn't have a life outside the radio station. He almost lived there. Trouble was, it was hot and stuffy in that place. And delightful as Hobbit was, he had what I quickly learned to call a hygiene problem.
Well, for me, I worked up until about, 4 years ago now, in Waterstones. I spent about 7 years there. And I published my first 2 novels while I was working there. And I wrote my first one, actually, mostly in there.
Behind the top shelf. Did you get?
Yeah, it's the old cliche of I used to go up to the top floor, which is the quiet floor, because it had computer stuff on it and things. And I'd sit there in the evening times and write a lot of it there. So after those first 2 books, which was my first 2-book deal, then with Crippen, which was my 3rd book, I was writing that, and I got promoted in work, and I was spending way too much time in there, and I wasn't spending enough time on the novel. And after a while, I just started to feel that I had to make a choice, and I knew what I really wanted to do in life was this. And if I stayed where I was, it wasn't going to happen. My employers were, reasonably enough, I suppose, wanting me to do something to earn my wages. And so one night, I was in. We used to go to the Duke pub across the road from the shop, and I'd locked up the shop, and it was about 7 or 8 of us went across. And I was sitting there, and I don't know what came over me. I just decided I'd had enough, and I took the keys out of my pocket. I handed them to one of the staff, and I never walked back into the shop from that night till this. I went home, I emailed the area manager. I said, "I'm not going back." And she phoned me the next day, and I was too terrified to take the call. So I waited until she got off the phone, and I emailed her again, and I said, "I really, really mean it. Please leave me alone, don't call me again." And
you're some boy.
I think she thought I think people thought I was a bit crazy.
I was dreading the first night away from Garve and all the subsequent nights, but first things first. I was sure I wouldn't sleep, because wasn't that what happened to people in distress? But I needn't have worried. I slept like I was dead, and woke up in a bed and a room that I didn't recognise. Where's this? For a moment my curiosity was almost pleasant, then reality tumbled down onto me. That day was one of the most dislocated of my life. With no job to show up at, my time was spent mostly in my bedroom, keeping out of Mum's way. Even though she was very vocal about how this was just a phase I was going through and that I'd be back with Garv in no time, my popularity with her was enjoying an all-time low. Helen, on the other hand, was treating me like a visiting freak show and dropped by to torment me before she went to work. Anna came too, in an attempt to protect me. "God, you're still here," Helen marvelled, marching into the room. "So you've really left him? But this is all wrong, Maggie. You don't do this sort of thing." I was reminded of a conversation I'd had with my sisters the previous Christmas. We were trapped in the house without even a Harrison Ford film to take our mind off things, and were driven to wondering what each of us would be if we were food instead of people.